Welcome to the FI Investors Podcast, helping you achieve financial independence through real estate investing, one episode at a time. We talk about personal finance, mindset, and real estate investing. Whether you're a rookie or looking to scale your portfolio, we're here to provide you with the tactics and actionable steps to achieve your goals. Here are your hosts, Diego Corzo and Ward Mahoney.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the FI Investors Podcast. My name is Diego and today we have one of the first episodes of the year 2025. I am super excited. We have Dana Fleischman talking about his real estate journey, the flips that he's currently doing, how he's investing out of state while he lives in California, and what his plans are for 2025 and growing his portfolio to 10 doors. Well, he has 13, so 13 doors and beyond. So I am super excited for this new year. 2025 is going to be an amazing year for the FI Investors community. We have over 100 members now, and it's really rewarding to see everybody investing, taking action, and we are going to continue providing lots of value to here in the podcast, you as the audience, and also the members of the tribe. So if you are interested in joining a tribe here this 2025, if you're hungry and you want to surround yourself with like-minded individuals, the FI Investors is the community for you. We have weekly calls and we have yearly retreats, yearly masterminds, with the first one of 2025 coming in February 2025 in Puerto Rico. So I am very excited. We're going to be around 25 real estate investors, all working towards an amazing 2025 and, of course, growing our real estate portfolio and bettering our relationships. So if you are interested in learning more about the mastermind or coming to Puerto Rico for the FI Investors yearly retreat, this will be our third annual event, hanging out with all different investors. We have different speakers come on. We're going to be at the Penthouse in Isla Verde. So if you guys are interested, definitely let us know. And with that said, I am really excited to learn more about Dana and his projects, everything that he has going on. So without further ado, let's go on to the show. What is up, Dana? How are you? Welcome to the FI Investors Podcast.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Of course. So Dana, we've known each other for a few years now. And you've been growing your real estate portfolio. I know you're a realtor in the Sacramento area. But tell me a little bit about you and where your portfolio is now, and then we'll work backwards.
Yeah, so I've been in Sacramento since 2004. I grew up in Monterey Bay Area, and I moved here for college, and I just never left. I love this city. It's amazing. It's a great place to live and raise your family. And I started investing here in Sacramento. And then my pathway kind of took me to some other places, including Michigan and Georgia. And then now I'm back in Sacramento. I just completed my first flip, and I'm also a realtor here in town as well.
Okay, perfect. And how many doors do you own at the moment?
So I have 13 doors at the moment.
13 doors. You just completed your first flip, you said, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
How has it been focusing on, because you mentioned that you're a realtor, how has the transition, or at least your focus, been from a realtor as your active income, and also now that you started flipping? How has that been?
Yeah, so I've always been, I don't know why I was always nervous to do flips. And I think you just hear horror stories from people about things going bad or things not going as planned. And so recently I kind of revisited that, and I'm like, I'm going to flip a house. Like, let's kind of put the feelers out, start looking. And over the years of owning property here in town, and um, in other states, there's always been repairs that come up. There's always been things that need to be fixed. And I've taught myself a lot of how to manage those projects, and I know in depth what properties need. And so I had all the tools. It was just applying it to a different type of investing and a different type of real estate. And so, yeah, the first one I was happy. I would be happy still if we broke even. I think we'll do better than that. But like, it was just for me, I'm a lifelong learner, and I thought, what better way to learn than just to dive in and try it. And then also being an agent, you kind of create a multiple income stream and a listing for yourself. As we all know, the real estate market's softened or, slowed a little bit, and, it's hard to get listings. Not everyone's wanting to move if they have a low rate. So what better way to find a great deal, have a listing, be able to put it out to the world, and showcase what you do, not only as a realtor, but also as an investor.
Exactly. Now, I know that investing, a lot of people say, oh my gosh, doing flips in California, you might need like a lot of cash to be able to do something like that, right? Because they think that, of course, not a lot of people think that homes in California are just extravagant, but not all areas are the same as far as pricing. Can you walk me down the numbers on this flip that you did, and how did you fund it?
Yeah, so I partnered with two good friends of mine, Serge and Cam, and one of them is works for a school district as a maintenance supervisor. He's done a ton of work on houses over the years as well. And then Cam is a lender here in Sacramento. He's been lending for over 20 years. And both of those people, I felt like, would not only create a good team, but also bring different things to the table. Cam, in the beginning, when we first got the deal, he handled all the lending, guidelines and communication. We talked to probably 5 hard money lenders just to figure out who had the best rates, who had the best fees. It's not always just about rates. A lot of times it's fees that, are the deciding factor. So that was really nice, having someone who's well-versed in that type of stuff. And then Serge was another partner who really handled a lot of the repairs and managing of the schedule, since that's what he does on his day-to-day job. So we purchased the property for $417. It's currently listed right now at $659. And if all goes well, like, if we get close to what it's listed at, we'd probably net a little over 100,000 that we would split between all of us.
That's really nice.
We each had to bring I think it was 22,000 to the deal. So we all kind of contributed into one account. We created an LLC. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been something where as I've said to both of them, is let's just continue the project, keep it going. And we're learning as we go, no one had a crystal ball of like how things would go. But our budget was 50,000. We're currently at like 65, 70. So I've talked to a lot of flippers, not only in this area, but other areas. And, it's easy to go over. And I feel like we really reined it in well enough where we solved a lot of the problems with the property, but it's easy to overspend.
Yeah. In which areas in a flip is it easier to overspend?
So like, for example, with this property, both roofs had multiple layers, but they weren't leaking. So in our head, we're like, in a dream world, let's replace both the roofs. Let's solve that problem. they don't have to worry about it for a while, but like it didn't work in the budget completely. So we spent some money to repair the roofs in different areas and make them stronger. And time will tell if we have to offer a credit of some kind towards a buyer, which a buyer might prefer a credit so that they could lower their rate.
Mm-hmm.
But we did not replace both roofs. And then there's another example. There was a covered patio space that was just so ugly that we thought this is a tear down. We got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And we it was one of the last spaces that we took care of. But Serge and his father have been painters for years, and his dad just started kind of masking stuff off. He painted the whole room. That made it look better. There were these older like metal windows in the space, and it was just like faded and bad. And he taped all the things off like professionally, and then we used satin black paint, and it totally made the place pop. It looks amazing. It's like one of my favorite rooms now. So like we could have spent money to demo that, but
Mm-hmm.
the front house is a 3-1, and that's valuable space to someone, a first time
Mm-hmm.
home buyer that's like, I have a 3-1, but I have this 200 square foot bonus room. Like, I'm glad we kept it.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, as far as the timeline of the flip, from the moment that you bought it till the moment that you're done with the flip to put it on the market, and what are the average days on market? Just the expectation of that, because people usually, sometimes when they're looking at the timelines on a flip, they really don't take into consideration like the average days on market
Yeah.
that it takes to put it under contract, and the days that it actually, like, it might be another 30 days to close, right?
Yeah.
So what does that timeline look like from now that you put it on the market?
Yeah. I mean, days on market, it's longer right now. I think it really depends what kind of product you have. I feel like we did a really good job of, making the interior shine. Um, I think this one's all about value because in California, people want an ADU. That's like one of the main
Hmm.
ways that like a first time home buyer will be able to pay half their mortgage. And the fact that it has a front house and a back house, and the fact that it has two separate structures and it's not a duplex, I think that's more desirable. Um, it's I'm optimistic, but I'm also realistic in my head. And what I've explained to Cam and Serge is, it's going to take time. And I think right now for sellers, if you have a great product and you're priced competitively, patience is like the key right now. So um, that's my thought. And we were going to wait till January, but I feel like, why not throw it up during the holiday? You might get some people that come through, and if not, we'll go into January.
Hmm. Yeah. And I feel like with that, the real buyers are still like right now, there's still people that need homes. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, it's not like everybody just says, hey, I'll wait until after the new year. So it's something that you might be able to get a couple of offers here soon.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah. And
awesome.
I think having so like the properties that I have in Sacramento, I do midterm rentals on. And this is like right down the street from that and really close to like one of the biggest hospitals in Northern California. And so having that and be able to explain to people that walk through, like
Hmm.
maybe they don't even know about furnish finders or that type of investing, but
Hmm.
you know, I know the numbers of that area and I know, what the rents can be.
Hmm.
So that's been definitely like a positive.
Yeah. No, that's really good too that you are aware, especially you as the realtor, right? In this sense, you know exactly the different ways to market that property and the exit strategies, right?
Yeah.
So that then if you speak to an investor or to a family, especially since he has an A and B unit from that perspective, that ADU, it can totally be some extra cash flow for somebody else.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, so you have that flip and then you have another one too, correct?
Yeah, the other one is about, they're both in kind of the neighborhood that I live in. Um, but the other one is with different partners. It's a little bit more hands off. But that one's a 4 bedroom, 2 bath, and it has an unpermitted ADU in the back. That's like a studio. But that one's going to be amazing too. I'm really excited about both.
Hmm. Now, what are some questions, for example, that may come up when people are like, "Hey, is this permitted or not?" Um, what do we do now if somebody buys that it isn't permitted? Like, what are some concerns that a potential buyer might have?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main concern in general is like unpermitted versus permitted. Is it done right? Is it a space that I can use the square footage on for future sale? The weird thing in California or Sacramento, I'd say maybe Sacramento, because the Bay Area can be a little bit more like strict on, ADU, permitting and stuff. Like
Hmm.
if it's newly built, yeah, it should be permitted. It should be kind of go through that process. But this was built in like the 80s, and it's
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
it's really it's really cool, like a really cool space that someone did. If anything, we've made things safer. We've redone electrical. We've redone like the interior wiring and stuff. It just had like open wire from the main house to this,
Oh,
um,
okay.
and so that's like really dangerous. So we put everything underground. So like, there's definitely been we corrected the sewer line. So there's been definitely things that were done not right. And
Hmm.
as a flipper, I want to partner with someone, and this is my philosophy is if we find something wrong, like we're not just going to paint over it. We're not just going to like not disclose it. We have to, I want to make a space that someone would want to live in. And so,
Hmm.
either we don't fix it and we tell them, or we fix it and solve the problem, and not just like, there's so many flippers that just don't do things right. And I totally understand why that happens now that I've done one. It's like you have extreme decision fatigue, through
Hmm.
this process, and like it's stressful. Like it's not simple. And having 2 kids and going through this process, you have to be committed.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
I feel like those things are really important. Um, now that you've done those two flips, let's say once they sell and everything, would you continue looking at flipping opportunities?
totally, I think as a realtor, and an investor, like I'm so excited that I tried this. And I think you have to be willing to look at a lot of places. But for years I thought there's no deals in Sacramento, and this is my hometown. And I feel like now there's like been like kind of you know a resurgence of like excitement over like
Hmm.
I could just be home. Like I don't have to stress about a backed up sewer line in Michigan, or like a roof problem in Georgia. Like I'm right here, and I
Hmm.
can do this. And maybe I'll end up keeping some of them. Like this
Yeah.
first one that we just listed, we thought real hard about, like, maybe we just keep this. Like this is going to be an amazing property in 20 years.
Hmm.
Most of everything's done. Why not? But we're gonna
Exactly.
try to we're gonna try to list it and see what happens.
No, that's really good because at that point you have the different exit strategies, right? Especially if it's in your neighborhood too, or like at least in your area, you already know a lot about it. Now, you mentioned earlier about the properties that you have locally that you currently do midterm rental.
Yeah,
Can you explain the difference between short-term rental and midterm rental
yeah,
and why you decided to do midterm rental for those?
yeah. So I've always been kind of someone that just tries things, and tries to, I'd rather just try it, and if it sticks, it sticks. If it doesn't, then I'll try something new. But um, the first property I ever bought that was a rental was this house down the street from the house that I had first bought for myself. That was my primary. And It was literally 440 square feet, the house, and it was a dump. And I found out from a neighbor that the landlord and the tenant didn't get along. And so I bought that property. I taught myself how to rehab it. We ended up kind of rehabbing it. The whole joke was like rehabbed it like twice, on my credit card, a lot of it. And then at the end, like with the contractor, he was showing me how to do everything, fixing problems that I was having subcontractors do. So I was learning, and I ended up renting that one long term. But there came a point where I learned about midterm rentals, and it's literally 10 blocks from the med center. And so when the tenant moved out, usually when a tenant moves out, people are like kind of upset or like, it's a turnover. But when this tenant moved out, I was so excited that I could make this a midterm rental. So my wife and I furnished the whole property, and we put it up on Furnish Finder, and we just started getting people that rented it. And then shortly thereafter, I had the idea of, I've always loved tiny homes. And so I had the idea of, I was like, why can't I put a tiny home on my property, my primary? And so I put a tiny home on my property as a test. I found it on Craigslist. And I rented that out to traveling nurses and doctors. And then I was like, why can't I put a tiny home next to my rental? There's like a little side yard space that it's like a driveway, pretty wide. And I'm like, I'm just going to park the tiny home there. And so there was a shed, like a big shed there. I had that hauled away. And then I just literally like found it online, bought it. I had it delivered. I ran all the sewer line, all that, the plumbing, sewer, electrical. And then that's doubled my cash flow on the first property I ever bought.
Wow.
And midterm rentals, I'm a big fan. You get lighter use on your properties. The people that rent them work a ton. They're working 12-hour days, sometimes more. And they just love having a safe, quiet space to live. I was kind of worried about them being so close together, but it's worked out really well so far. So
that's really cool. Now, how much was the tiny home?
yeah. So the first one, it's like, I would say it's like B quality. It was like $12,000. I just found this guy that was selling it in Santa Cruz, and he came and delivered it to me. And I had to put a little bit more money into finishing it and making it how I wanted. But the second one, I went like no, A plus quality, and that was 40,000. And
okay,
it's like a craftsman house inside. Like it looks so nice. And this guy that built it, he built it for his son to live on his property, and then his son ended up moving somewhere else. And so it was like really sentimental for him because he spent so much time and energy. But I was like,
of course,
this is like a work of art. Like I'm excited. But he was excited for me to get it.
So then what are the numbers on let's say the first one?
Yeah, so the one at my property, I'd say all in, over the last 3 years, I've probably put like there's probably 20,000 into the property of like fixing it, adding a water heater, adding an HVAC. I've constantly made it better. I added like a laundry room shed space next to it. And that rents for $1,400 a month. And I have a med student who he like loves being quiet, respectful. He loves being on the property. He rented it for a year, and he's about halfway through his year. And like in Sacramento, like you can rent a room for $1,000. So for him, it's like he gets his own little space. He has a parking spot. It's quiet, and it's $1,400, everything included. So he's stoked.
That's really cool.
And then on the other one, the rental with the tiny house next to it, I rent the rental for $1,900 and the tiny house for $1,500, and all my bills are covered by $1,900. So the mortgage, the payment on the tiny house, everything is wrapped up for $1,900. So as long as I rent that second one, I'm okay.
Wow, that is awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. You have some pretty good cash flow there on both. So, question for you then. Now, there was also a time from what you have told me, that you also were able to pull a line of credit, right? A HELOC.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, how have you, so can you explain what a HELOC is for
Yeah.
the audience, but how have you used that HELOC?
Yeah. So a HELOC is a home equity line of credit. You can take it out on your primary residence, um, and basically it allows you to loan yourself or others money. Um, and as long as you're loaning or using that money with a higher rate of return than the interest rate on the money, then it's a win. Um, and so I've used that for the tiny house projects. I've used that to buy other properties. I own two houses in Georgia. Um, and then I've also used that for some repairs and renovations in Michigan. Um, and I think it's a powerful tool if you want to scale.
Mm-hmm.
I think that obviously you have to be real careful because there's, people that use the HELOC for buying a boat or a car, or,
Yeah.
you have to be very like respectful of that. Like almost that, even though you're kind of your own bank with it, like you just have to be, thoughtful in what you use it for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but that's good. I like the way that you've used it for, like, you use that HELOC to increase your cash flow, to increase your net worth. At the end of the day, you become your own bank, and instead of asking the bank for either a credit card per se or asking the bank for a loan, you're able to technically just use the equity from that property. And what's cool about this too is that you're able to, once you pay it back, you can reuse that capital again and again.
Yeah.
So it's not like you have to ask, it's not like it's a loan where you ask the bank for 50,000, and once you're done spending it, you have to ask the bank for another 50,000, hope that they give it to you.
Yeah.
This one is just like a credit card per se, but it's based on the equity that you have in your home. So that's
And
really cool.
also I've always looked at rentals and like, use of these funds, um,
Hmm.
you know, as whenever someone pays rent, it's kind of like they're contributing towards a retirement in a way. So like I've always like thought of that as, you know, each time, I make a mortgage payment, you're kind of paying towards your like retirement. I don't know. It's a weird
Hmm.
way to think, but like I've always thought that, in my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. Now, I know that you have some long-term rentals in Michigan, and I believe some also in Georgia. But before we talk about long-term rentals, um, to wrap up the conversation on the midterm rentals that we were having earlier, what are some of the softwares, if any, or any kinds of systems that you have in place for the midterm rentals, um, compared to if you were doing something like a long-term rental locally?
Yeah. So, I mean, really the midterm rentals, um, I mainly just use Furnish Finder, and they send you leads of people looking for the property. Sometimes people look exactly at your property and they message you, and then sometimes they send you leads of people like saying, "Oh, I'm looking for a studio," and they give parameters of what they're looking for specifically, um, and then you can contact those leads. So you set what days people are going to move out, and that kind of adjusts in the system of when it shows up on the map. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then basically you vet your own tenants. I always do a background check. So I have them go through apartments.com. They fill out an application. And then that basically does a background check. It does a credit check. Um, and then it can verify, their income. And that gives me peace of mind, especially the one that's on my property. I want to make sure it's not a felon or like some, you know, some crazy background and like that's right next to my family. So I'm pretty consistent with every single person.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's helped a lot. I've only really had one kind of negative tenant experience on Furnish Finder. And there were probably red flags that I just kind of let
Ignored.
go let go. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, this lady was just kind of crazy, and it is what it is, right? Like you just learn from it and move on. And I'd say most people that I've dealt with are great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, but at least it's good that you go through that process of vetting the tenant, doing the background check, making sure, of course, that they can pay and all of that, because you don't want to run into an issue that you may have missed. But it's good that you have those systems already in place, so
Yeah.
that as soon as you have another one asking, you already know what to do.
And then you always ask for the deposit, even though it's a 1 to 3 month lease. And then, make sure they know about the cleaning fee. I've had people say, I clean, and I'm like, it's not clean. So, there's always these things.
Yeah.
But the cool thing with Furnish Finder is a lot of times people will extend their stay. So if they're really enjoying Sacramento, they love their job. I've had one gal in there, it's been almost a year, and she loves it. So, um, yeah, I've had a really good experience with Furnish Finder.
That's really cool. That's really good. Now, as far as your long-term rentals go, can you talk to us a little bit about the properties that you have in Michigan?
Yeah, so
And
I
why
have
Michigan? Why Michigan? That's the only thing too.
yeah, it's interesting because I'll probably get some flack for this, but like being from California, I'm like very conscious of like climate change and like disasters. And you know when I first started looking, I was looking in some places in the southeast, and like then I can't remember what year it was. It's been a while, but there was like a major hurricane, and just wiped out so many properties. And I just was like, I don't want to deal with that every year. And so I like Google what state has the least natural disasters, and Michigan pops up.
Mm.
So that was like I wasn't even thinking like tenant laws or anything. I was like, what state has the least natural disasters? And so I just started calling agents in Grand Rapids. And I made a connection with a really cool agent there, Ben, and he's become like a lifelong friend. He would go and look at properties there for me. Initially, he told me all about the city, like everything that it had to offer, and I called like 5 or 6 realtors, and he spent the time to make sure I felt comfortable and he understood my vision. Um, and so then, like a month later, my wife and I went out there just for a fun trip, and it was awesome. It was like such a cool town, like kind of like a beer city, like Portland or like Asheville or something. Like it was just really fun. And we looked at like 3 or 4 houses, and I ended up buying or putting an offer on the first out of state rental. And it was a cool 2-story house with like a detached garage in Grand Rapids, and I think it was 147. Um, and yeah, it was just I started looking there because things in Sacramento started getting more and more expensive, and I had the
Mhm.
limiting belief of like I can't afford that or I can't make that work. But it taught me a lot, and having a rental out of state, there's pros and cons. You're not there, you're not able to see it all the time, but you're also not able to fix like the plumbing leak that the tenant calls you about.
Mhm.
So it's there's positives of it.
Yeah.
So I've literally only been there one time, and I have that property, and then I started buying in a town just west of there called Muskegon, and so that's where I have 2 triplexes and another single family in that space.
Oh, cool. And as far as like you mentioned, right? One of the things is you're far away, so you can't go in there and check out like the properties. Can have like if a tenant moves out, you're not there to do the move out check and all of that stuff. How instrumental has been the property manager
Oh, it's
that
it's
has
so
helped you out?
It's so important. I've had issues in both Georgia and Michigan, and I'm like, you have to have your finger on the pulse. You have to like, I mean, I try to make that person. I treat them with like absolute respect. I treat them, they're a part of my team. So like,
Of
you
course.
have to be engaged with them. You have to have, in my opinion, like weekly check-ins of some kind, at least in the beginning, because like it's been a roller coaster. So like there's
Hmm.
super positive times and like things are great. And then like there's been times where I had like this big property manager in Michigan that that didn't even tell me that there was a, a vacancy. And like I was on cruise control, so I didn't really know. And so that's on me too. But I just couldn't believe that I wasn't notified. And they were like, "Oh, we're so
Hmm.
sorry." And it's been like 4 months, and I'm like, yeah, that wasn't good. And you have to vet your property manager as much as you vet your tenants, in my opinion.
No, for sure, for sure. Now, what are some questions that you would ask a property manager to make sure that you vet them the right way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have someone that has experience, um, but I also don't think the biggest company wins. It's
Hmm.
kind of in the middle. Um, it's someone who's responsive, attentive. Um, I prefer someone that doesn't mind if I text them. Even I don't expect a response right away, but we're working closely together. Like if I get a piece of mail, I'm gonna reach out and ask what it is or how we can take care of it. Um, and right now I have a great property manager in Michigan and in Georgia, and I'm really happy. But those are some things I would talk to them about, and then also really understanding like when do your disbursements go out. And like I've just noticed like some property managers will like wait a little bit, and
Hmm.
that affects me because how do we pay a mortgage if we haven't gotten the disbursement? It's all a chain reaction kind of. So
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And also you want to make sure that I always say if you're comparing property managers, right? Sometimes it's not the one that just let's say there's one that's 8% and another one is 10. That doesn't is not really that is important, but other things to consider is like any fees that they're charging you just
yeah,
in case, right? If they're charging 10% above what any contractor charges,
yeah,
um, if they charge a leasing fee, how much is the leasing fee? Is it 75%? Is it 50%? Is it 100%? Right?
totally.
And so many different things that like if they release it, like if the same tenant signs up again, what is that fee? Is it
Yeah.
50% or 25% because they haven't moved anything? So those are things that you really, really have to consider and compare, so that you can make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. I feel like that is really important.
Yeah, and like just with contractors, the same thing. Like you want to talk to three or four so you can make a good decision because you don't know what you don't know in terms of fees. And
Hmm.
whatever the fees are in Georgia might be different than Michigan, might be different than California. So yeah, no, I completely agree with what you said.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Now, do you have the same strategy in Georgia, I mean, in Georgia as you do the properties in Michigan, or do you do things differently over there? What strategy do you do in Georgia?
Yeah, those are both long-term rentals. I think one of them's Section 8, one of them's regular. But yeah, Georgia's actually, I mean, I've had positive tenant experiences for the most part in Georgia. And yeah, no, it seems like a good market. And that was also kind of a little bit of a decision based on natural disasters. But then there was like the crazy hurricane
Yes.
this year. But luckily my properties were okay. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's hard to control that obviously. But it's definitely something that I think about as an investor.
Yeah. And as far as the like 2025, right? Would you thinking like, let's say if you have some cash available, would you invest and grow in Michigan, or would you decide to grow in Georgia, or where would you put your money? The reason why I'm asking you this question is because, or maybe it can be another market, but the reason why I'm asking you these questions is because I feel like sometimes is important that as we decide what strategy or what market to go to, it's good if we have economies of scale from a perspective that we can plug and play, or we want to explore a new market, because the numbers, because the area, you might want to move into that years later, who knows?
Mhm.
But where do you see investing mostly in the future?
I think Georgia, I would probably pick over Michigan. Um, you know, Michigan gets kind of a lot of snow, and so over time, that can affect like how a property looks and repairs that need to be done. Georgia, has its own kind of issues, but I also feel like it's more of a temperate climate more year round. So it just gets kind of more of a dusting of snow. I love the market. I have the other properties already. Um, but I'm also really excited about the potential of maybe keeping one of the flips in Sacramento.
Mm,
So I don't know. I'm this whole past year and I think maybe half of this year will be still stabilizing like my own position. Um, and just making sure that I pay down debts to kind of reset. And then
mhm.
and then yeah, I'm excited to kind of explore. But I would say Sacramento or Georgia, I would be more gravitating towards.
Okay. No, that's good. That's good
Yeah.
because then it's important to know where you're going. And one thing that I like that you mentioned is paying off different debts, paying off like basically restarting or reestablishing your numbers and everything. I know that you and I have talked in the past about more of like the financials and knowing how to track your expenses, tracking the different credit cards and which one to pay off, which one to not pay off as quickly. Um, what has been your trajectory in whenever you didn't put as much emphasis or importance into tracking everything as to now tracking everything and choosing where you're putting down the money to pay off certain debts and restarting?
Yeah. I think it's been definitely trial and error in terms of how to juggle everything in your life. Um, I think being a parent in the early years of a kid's life is stressful, kind of. So the cost of childcare, the cost of other things that pop up, um, and those are just like fixed every month. Um,
Mhm.
so I'm excited. You know, in this next year, our second kid will go to school. That'll kind of free up some monthly um, income to go towards other cool investments.
Mhm.
But yeah, you taught me how to use the PFS, the personal financial statement, and it's always a really great way to kind of go back to it, update it, not only see your progress of where you're at, but also it's almost like a roadmap map or like a strategy board for you to be able to play with different scenarios. If I pay this off, like what happens? And then like you could project that over, a period of time. So I've always been really thankful that, you know, I did that. And it's always something you can go back to, even if life gets busy and you don't go to it for 2 or 3 months, you always can
Mhm.
go back to it and update it and have more of an idea of a roadmap.
Yeah. Now, is there an app that you use to do that, or do you use a spreadsheet?
I just use a spreadsheet. You know, I haven't dived into any apps yet, but
Hmm.
I think it would be good. I think, I listen to a lot of Ramit,
Mm-hmm.
his podcast where he does a lot of like personal finance with couples, and I love it. Like, it's just good reinforcement on, making sure that everyone's on the same page. And like, we're not perfect either, but like, it's nice to be able to have the same vision with your partner on where you
Yes.
want to go and what you want to do.
Yes, I think so too, especially as um like what you mentioned, being on the same page and having those conversations. I remember that you and I and your wife had conversations on the finances and the importance of both of you to be on the same page so that the goals are the same and there's no surprises if something changes or if somebody decides, because if you're not on the same page, one might spend money on something and you didn't take that into account when you're trying to pay off a credit card or something, right?
Sure.
So having that awareness and the conversations of where the money's going is really important.
Yeah, no, for
Yeah.
sure. And my wife is a marriage and family therapist, but she kind of owns her own practice. And so we both kind of have that entrepreneurial pathways. And so
Hmm.
I think it's even more important. Like, not one of us just has like, I have a W 2, but I'm also the realtor, which is like up and down. So it's just important to be on the same page even more because of that.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. Now, Dana, where w- I know that you mentioned like where you will be investing, stuff like that, but what's next for you and maybe in your realtor business and what's next?
Yeah, I mean, I've been just real excited to do the flip and then list like process. And so
Yeah.
um I've also have, I feel like I'm just, it's been good. It's been a good like 5 years as a realtor, but it takes time for people to know that you're a realtor. It takes time for you to get your marketing systems in place. And I think it also just takes time for people personally, not only as an investor, but as a realtor, to just feel comfortable talking to people about what you do and having those
Hmm.
conversations. And, you've always told me like, make sure everyone knows what you do, and then have those conversations every week with people, about real estate. And I think I've always been a little bit more reserved and like not wanting to be like flashy or like, oh, I own, 13 doors or, whatever it is. Like, everyone's kind of on their own path in life. But then what I've realized is if I don't tell people, like you know, they won't know that it is possible for someone to invest in real estate if I don't tell anyone. And so I'm just excited to like help people, tell people, more about real estate, help more families like move into homes that they are excited about. So that's kind of where my year is going to be, but definitely excited about, continuing to look for flips and getting my hands dirty.
Yeah, yeah. Now, as you've been investing or doing the flips, doing midterm, is there a certain app that you say, hey, if you're an investor, you definitely need this app that will help you?
I don't really have like a special app that I use. I mean, I definitely think having a deal calculator, being able to like run the numbers, even just on a piece of paper,
Mm-hmm.
is important. It's weird because the MLS in Sacramento, the app that they have is just really bad, and
Mm-hmm.
I just, have trouble navigating it a lot. I love Redfin, and I'll like have all my settings of like been on the market for 45 days or 60 days, and are there bad pictures, or the first flip I found, like, he didn't even market the second house behind it. And so,
Mm-hmm.
it was really like, it was very lucky, but it was also me going out there and looking at the house and seeing what opportunities are here. So I think whatever app you feel comfortable looking for houses on, like, just dig in, and like, I don't know, my ever since I've looked at properties in Grand Rapids, out of state, like, I'll go to bed like looking at Redfin, or it's like it's fun for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't have a special app in particular, but just get out there and start looking.
No, that's great. That's great. So Dana, where can people reach out if they have questions?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Dana Fleischman _ realtor. I'll spell my last name Fleischman. Shoot me a message. I'm always willing to talk to people, whether they're in my market, Sacramento, or anywhere. I like helping people. I'm a lifelong learner, and yeah, I'm here as a resource for people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and you've been really helpful too, being part of the FI investors community, helping other people, answering questions, being a guest. You just gave a portfolio update and talked about your flips with the lessons learned and everything on our mastermind call on Monday. So that's been very helpful. So Dana, thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And you sharing your story is definitely going to inspire others.
Yeah, thank you, Diego, for having me.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the FI Investors Podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And share this with a fellow real estate investor who you think would find value in what we do. Until next time.